we are going to get started if everybody's ready.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question before you start?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
What is the name of Barstool?
Yeah, so the company that produces our podcast and puts it out there is called Barstool Sports.
And it's like a couple of guys sitting in a bar watching a football game or something on TV?
A little bit more than that these days, but yeah, in a nutshell, that's really what it comes down to. It's a website, entertainment and sports website dedicated to just, as you put it, people having conversations in a bar with a little bit of a more comedic spin on things.
Okay. Comedic spin?
Comedic, comedy.
Okay.
All right.
Can we?
Okay. Oops, sorry. I was going to say, I'm going to mute myself and hide my video, but I'm going to be here just in case anything comes up.
Cool.
Thanks.
And then, sir, if you could move just a little bit closer to the microphone or the device, it just sounds like you're far away, and that'll translate real well on the.
Is that any better?
That's much better. Thank you. And I'm gonna go
Okay.
off video, and it'll be cons. I'm hitting record, and here we go.
All right. Joining us now on Zero Blog 30 is the author of the book titled "The Greatest Beer Run Ever: A True Story of Friendship Stronger Than War." Chick Donohue. Chick, welcome to Zero Blog 30.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you because you certainly have an interesting story, to say the least. And as many interesting stories start, the genesis of this one was inside of a bar. Who came up with this idea, and what was the whole idea behind it?
Well, I grew up on the west side of Manhattan, all the way uptown and in a neighborhood called Inwood. And I was walking through Central Park to get to the subway and to go back up to the neighborhood, and I inadvertently walked through a demonstration against the war in Vietnam, 1967. And I saw all sorts of stuff that I was embarrassed to be seen there. So I got out of there quick and got on the subway and went back up to the neighborhood and went into the bar that I frequented and eventually bought when I came back from this craziness. And the bartender, who I was a regular there, George Lynch, his nickname was the Colonel. He was a military buff.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying, "Look at these guys," and he's calling people on the TV all kinds of names and everything. And he says, "What is Dugan thinking about if he saw this going on? And what is Collins thinking about it?" And these were guys who were serving over there at that time. And he says, "Somebody should go over there and buy them all a beer and let them know that we're behind them and we're not with that crowd and we support them and rah, rah, rah." So everybody agreed, yeah, that'd be great, So he says, "Chicky, you got Siemens papers. Why don't you give me your Siemens papers? Let me borrow them and I'll go over there and I'll do that." So I looked at him, and Siemens papers is like an ID card. It's like giving someone your driver's license. As soon as the trooper looks at it, and if it's you and it's not me, they'll know.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "No, George, that can't happen." He says, "Well," I guess he insinuated, "Well, if I can't do it, you got to do it. Is there anybody else in here with Siemens papers?" "No, I got Siemens papers." "All right, George, I'll take care of it," flippantly said. And George says, "Oh, great, blah, blah, blah." The next day I come back, and who was waiting in the bar but Mrs. Collins, a little Irish woman born in Ireland with a great brogue, who was Tommy's mother, who was serving in Vietnam. And she says, "Oh, Chicky, George told me you were going to go over and see my Tommy and bring him a beer. And, oh, that's a great thing to do. And here," she tried to give me $100, so when I got there, I'd be able to give Tommy some money or buy him a beer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "No, Mrs. Collins, don't do this, It still didn't register to me until she opened up her mouth and, more important, offered me the 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned 100 down because I knew if I took that 100, I'd have to go through a minefield if Tommy Collins was on the other side of it to get him that beer.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no, Mrs. Collins, you save it for him when he comes home. You can give it to him. I'm sure he'll need 100 to go out and have a party with us. So, and with that, Lynch had names of other guys.
Okay, but it's one thing. I think the sentiment is great because I agree with you. I think gentlemen of your generation that were not treated well when they came home from war is really a travesty. And people have different viewpoints of whether or not we should have been in Vietnam, but the fact of the matter remains that we were. And the men and women who went and fought over there, they should be treated honorably because they were doing what they were ordered to do, and I think that is important. So the idea to bring them a beer is a great idea. However, it wasn't like, you were going from Manhattan and popping over to Brooklyn and bringing your buddy a beer. You're talking about going to the other side of the world into a war zone and bringing beer. How does that even happen?
Well, to me at the time, it didn't sound weird at all. To me at the time, I had already been to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I actually sailed as a member of a crew there, I think, twice. This would have been my third trip.
Mm-hmm.
So getting there wasn't really the problem, a big problem. There were ships. If the Vietnam War wasn't going on, there wouldn't be so many ships sailing at the time, so there was plenty of jobs. Most of the crew of the mariners didn't want to go over there. They'd rather get on a cruise ship to the Caribbean or something. But I thought I'd get a ship in the Union Hall and go down, and they have a big chalkboard, and they have the names of the ships in the port and where they're sailing and what they need, like an able-bodied seaman, an ordinary seaman, a wiper or whatever, oiler, whatever. And I'd go down, and I'd been on what they call a beach. I'd been off a ship for like 2 months by then, and it was time I went back to sea. So I had seniority on the list. I have a card that they give you when you come off a ship 2 months before. You go to the Union Hall, they stamp this card that day, that hour, and now you keep that card. So when you want to go back to work, you come back to the Union Hall, you throw that card on when they call for a certain job on a ship, and by seniority, the guy with the longest card, the longest time on the beach, would get that job. So I went down a day or two later and into the Union Hall, and right at the top of the list, they had what they call a pierhead. And a pierhead means that it's leaving then, almost right that moment. About enough time to get to the ship, and it's gone. So not enough time to go home. They actually give you money to get a cab or something to take you to the ship. So pierhead, it was the SS Drake Victory. It was in Leonardo, New Jersey, which is just across the bay in New Jersey. And it's the only thing in Leonardo, New Jersey is an ammunition dump. That's the only thing there. With a big, long pier that sticks out into the bay. Nobody knows what that pier is. You can see it anytime you fly into New York. It's just one single pier that goes out about a mile and then turns into 3 little piers. And that's the ammunition dump. And so Drake Victory, Leonardo, New Jersey, only going to one place, Vietnam. So,
and did you tell anybody you were going? Any of your friends or family or anybody, or you just made the decision on the spot and didn't call anyone and just got on that ship?
Well, in fact, I did. I spoke to Colin's mother and Rick Dugan, who I lived 2 blocks away from that bar. He was born and raised in the same apartment house that I was. And I went up to see his mother, tell his mother that I was going over there. And Bobby Pappas, who lived a couple of blocks down Sherman Avenue, his father was a bartender down there, Spiro. So I went down to see Spiro, and I said, hey, by the way, I'm trying to get a ship to go over to see Bobby. So essentially, I did tell a few members of the family. Mm-hmm. And you know, the bar room was like our social hangout. It was like a club. If somebody was going to do something stupid, that would be the first place the information would get out in. So I just went. And Did I think I was going to get that chip? Did I think it would be there? No, there was a chance it was going to be there. And I would have tried hard to get it done. I might have waited around even an extra week if that chip wasn't there. So I just did it.
And did you, at that point, were you bringing beer with you, or did you say, I'll figure out the beer once I get over there? What was the process of actually bringing them the beer?
Well, the beer was kind of simple. New York, I went to a local beer distributor there on 14th Street, I believe it was, at 13th Street, Manhattan. And I bought a case of beer. And the guy gave me like a burlap bag, the equivalent of a burlap bag, and I threw it in and went to the ship. So I went, no, I didn't get it there. I got out to Leonardo, New Jersey. I got to where the pier was, and there was a bar right across the street. Funny, there should be a bar at a pier. And I went into the bar, and in Jersey, unlike in New York, they sold off premises. You could buy a case of beer, or you couldn't do that in those days in New York. I don't know if you can now. So I told the guy, I said, have you got a case of whatever I asked for, Spud or Pabst Blue Ribbon or Schaefer or Wrangell or whatever I asked for? And the guy says, no, he didn't have that. He had some other beer. So I said, God, I said, man, he tried to sell me Schlitz or something, which I considered a Philadelphia beer, and I couldn't take a Philadelphia beer to my buddies. One of the national brands I could have, or a local brand. So I said, nah, I can't take that one. He says, well, it's beer. He says, where you going? That it got to be a special beer. So I told the guy, I said, I'm getting on that ship there, and I'm going to Vietnam, and I promised to bring some beer to my buddies over there. So the guy says, here, take this. And he's the guy who gave me the burlap bag.
Mm-hmm.
So put it in the burlap bag, and I don't even think he charged me for it.
Well, that was nice of him.
It was very nice.
Yeah.
Well, he was a patriot, I guess. And I went across the street and went on the pier. And the pier was so long, I'll never forget it. A guy had to drive me out there.
Oh, really?
That's how long the pier was. Yeah. Besides, I'm carrying the case of beer. And so I went on board, and I got my room, and I put my beer in there, and that was that.
And then how long did it take? Because so from my experience, when I deployed to Iraq, you get on a plane from Texas, you go to Maine, and then you go to either Germany or Ireland, and then you go to Kuwait. You wait in Kuwait a little while, and then then you get on a plane and go to Iraq. What was the process of getting that ship from Leonardo, New Jersey to Vietnam?
Well, if it was a cruise ship or a passenger ship, it would have made 10 stops before it got to Vietnam. Ammunition, they don't want ammunition ships coming to their downtown pier for a tourist stop.
Right.
So it wasn't going to stop anywhere. It left there. The next stop was Panama Canal. Then through the canal, and the next stop after that was Quinnon in Vietnam. It was 31 days on a ship from the Pacific side of the canal to Quinnon.
Wow, that's a very long time. And did you partake in any of those beers that you were carrying along, or you kept them safe?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But technically in those days, you couldn't have alcohol on a ship. The crew wasn't allowed to possess alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally ignored, but you couldn't have a big deck party or something. So I did. I had a few of those beers. But I also knew in the previous trips to Vietnam that in the ports, you could buy beer. I knew that.
Got it. Okay. So you were anticipating you'd be able to get your hands on more beer. So you get to Vietnam, you load up back on more beer, and back in 1967, the technology wasn't exactly what it is today. So how did you go about finding all these guys from the neighborhood?
Well, having been in the Corps myself, I knew that everybody went by a military address. It wasn't, Da Nang, Pleiku, Kubai. It was such and such a company, such and such and then a FPO, or in the case of the Army, an APO.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I had those addresses that the family would have used to send to them, which told me the company, the battalion, or the regiment, and the division, or whatever. So that wasn't going to be a problem. I didn't think that was going to be a problem. Finding where they were was going to be the problem. So when I got there, the first guy I found was Collins. I didn't even get off the ship by the time I found Collins. He was an MP, and one of the jobs of the MPs in Quinnon was to put guards on ships that would have been military targets. Most of them would have been military targets, but certainly ships that were, all they had was ammunition. That was definitely a target. So they would have an MP detachment on there. Now, I knew he was in an MP outfit because of his address. So the guys come on the ship, and I see their outfits, and on their helmets, they had a number, like 78 Battalion or Charles, whatever they had. And it was the same number as Collins's address. All right. So I said, oh my God, it can't be. So I said, hey, you guys, you know this address? And they look at the address. Collins, yeah, I know Collins. I said, well, I'm a friend of his, and I thought they wouldn't tell me anything. So he says, well, it's easy. See that ship over there? We're going over there right from here. He says, he's on that ship there. We're going over to relieve him. So great. So can I go with you? Sure. Come on. So the rank and file, I had no problem with.
Mm-hmm.
I could go anywhere with the rank and file. But the officers, what are you doing here?
At some
they would
point,
ask me questions.
yeah, so exactly. So at some point, I have to imagine some people were wondering who the heck you were and what you were doing. So did you ever find yourself in a situation where you had to explain your way to an officer in
Yes.
one of the branches and get out of some trouble before they shipped you back home?
Well, they couldn't ship me back home. Anybody who's been in the military knows they're prepared for a lot of things, but they're not prepared for an American tourist in a war zone.
I mean, Vietnam wasn't exactly a hot spot to go vacation back in the 60s.
No, there was no American Express office in Quinnon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I went over, got on that little boat with him, and went over there with his relief. And Collins, holy Chicky, what are you doing here? I said, your mother sent me over to buy you a beer. So to make a long story short, we giggled and laughed and everything. And I went with him to go back to the barracks and leave his gear and everything. And they're just coming off duty. So they must have been there maybe a couple of days. I don't know exactly. And they had let's go out. So him and I and a couple of his buddies, who were part of his gang, I guess, we went into Quinnon, went to the local bar, and started partying. And he's saying, and I showed him my list of guys, and right after him was Dugan. Maybe I had it alphabetical, Collins, Dugan. And he says, Ricky, he says he's up in Ankh. I said, where's Ankh? He says, it's up in the Highlands, not too far from here. He's with the first Cav. Oh, great. Charlie Company, the second of the year, whatever the address was, but it was the first Cav. So I said, great, up. So I knew a little bit about the first Cav, and they're very prominent patch with the horse's head. So it's like I've lived my life. I just looked down at the bar, and there was nothing but GIs in the bar. Mm-hmm. All right? And a couple of odd hustlers or something. Lots of pretty girls. And standing in the middle of it was I knew he was a Texan with the big cowboy hat. He big 6'4", big, huge guy. And he had a first Cav patch on his shoulder. So I went over to him and I said, hey, you with the first Cav? Yeah, with the first Cav. He's looking at me, and I'm dressed like this, all right? It had like a light, almost bleached. They were bleached because they'd been washed so many times, not because it was the fashion. Trousers, dungarees, and a shirt. And I said, I'm looking for this guy, and I showed him the address. And he says, I know Charlie Company. Yeah, they were up at Arcade. And I said, can you tell me, how can I get up there? He says, what are you in the Army? Well, what branch of the service you with? Or who are you with? I said, I'm with myself. I'm a seaman. And I promised his mother I would come and see him and all this. So I told him he's my stepbrother or whatever. I gave him a story. And he says, well, if you want, you meet me on the tarmac tomorrow morning at 0800, he says, and I'll fly you up there. I said, you'll fly me up there? He says, yeah, he was like the chief on a what is it like? I know the C-130s.
Mhm.
This was like a smaller version. Could it be an Albatross, a twin engine, instead of a 4-engine on a C-130?
I'm
The
not
Navy
really
had
sure. It's not
different-
important though.
But anyway, he was the chief on his plane, and he was going up there in the morning, and he promised to fly me up there. So I partied all night with Collins and his buddies, and the next morning they run me down to the airfield, and here was Tex. You couldn't miss him, and he put me on a plane, flew me up to, where did he take me? Fubai? Yeah, Fubai. I flew up to Fubai.
Well, I mean, so the first two guys on your list, it seems pretty lucky that you find your buddy Collins right there at the port, and then you happen to run into a guy from the first cav who can give you a ride up to their base. How many more guys did you see after that, and what was your method to get into each of them?
There was no method. It was luck. It was, if that wasn't a coincidence, it got even better after that. It got harder, but better. Because when I got to On K, I had to, where's this, Charlie? Oh, you got to go down this long road through, like, not a jungle because it was kind of drier there. But nothing there. No buildings, about a mile through a woods, like a dusty road. And I got to the end, and there was a bunch of little barracks there, and found Charlie Company. Few people, and there was a supply sergeant there, big African American guy. So I said, I'm looking for this Dugan guy, Charlie Company. He was the supply guy for Charlie Company. He said, they ain't here. I said, they ain't here. I'm looking for this guy. Well, they all went up north, he said. I said, up north. I said, do you know where they went up north? Like, tell me a town or something. I have something to shoot for. And he says, I don't know where they went up north. They just went up north. So I said, I gave him some sob story. Maybe if I give him a real sob story, he'll help me out here. And I told him, like, he was my stepbrother. His mother died. Our mother died. I promised before she died that I would go and find him and tell him she loved him and all that kind of stuff. So the guy says, listen, he says, I'll tell you what I can do. If you want to write him a note or even a letter, you give it to me, and I'll make sure he gets it this afternoon. I said, gets it this afternoon. You don't even know where he is. But you know it's going to get him. It's going to get this note this afternoon. Mm-hmm. He says, yeah. I said, how are you going to do that? He says, what do you mean, how am I going to do that? We got a 1,300 mail run. So I said, can I get on that 1,300 mail run? And he says to me, I'll never forget it, like that Texan. He said, you got here, didn't you? So however you got here, get on that.
Yep. All right. I mean, that's a great point. No, so
I started back down that road, and there's nothing on that road, no vehicles. I started down the road. I'm walking and hurrying. It's 12:30, whatever it is, and I see dust coming down the road, going the same direction that I'm going. So I flagged the guy down. He stops. It was a Jeep. There was 2 or 3 guys in it, at least 2. And I jump in. Must have been 3 because I jumped in the back. And the guy says, where you going? I said, I'm going to the airfield. Yeah, sure. And the guy says, sit next to me. He says, who are you? I said, where you going? I said, I'm over here looking for some friends. I got some beer to bring them the spear, you know. And this guy says, and the guy stopped the Jeep. It was Kevin McClune, one of the guys on my list.
Oh, okay.
He says, Chicky Donohue. Holy shit. He's driving a Jeep. Now, how lucky is that? So now he takes me right to the field until we get the plane, and we all had a beer, and I got on a plane, and that went up to, where did that go to? No. Up by way somewhere. Mm-hmm. The first one, I don't know. Oh, no, it took me to Fubai. And got off, and while I was on that plane, gets luckier, 2 guys were coming back from hospital. They were sitting along the side of that fall down rack like.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, they said, well, who you with? What are you doing? So I told both of them. One guy was terrified. He says, he couldn't get away from me, but he's strapped in on a plane. Where's he going to go? And the guy between me and him, he was laughing. He thought it was hilarious. He got a great kick out of it. So I knew I had an ally. And I told the other guy, fella, I'm not with you. I don't know you. Don't even tell me your name. Forget about it. So this guy was very helpful to me. And he says, well, they knew Dugan. They were in Dugan's company. They were going to Dugan. Wherever Dugan was, that's where they were going. So I said, this is great. This is perfect. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to let anybody know I'm with you, but I'm going to follow you. So just know I'm following you. If you can help me in any way without getting in trouble, all right? So they did. Get out of the plane. One guy, again, didn't want to have nothing to do with me. The other guy says, come on over this way. We're going over there. And when they told him what to do, he'd come over and say, we're going to get in that PC over there, and it's going to take us to LZ Tombstone. That was the name of it, LZ Tombstone. So they went and they jumped in a PC, and we all knew at that time, if there was a vehicle there, and how do you get him to go? You hit him twice, and he goes. And how do you get him to stop? You hit him once, and he stops. So as soon as the PC started moving, I ran along it and hit the side. The guy stopped. I jumped in the back. They helped me. And then the guy started off again. He went off. Next thing I know, a couple of miles later, we're at a little church on a hill in just north of Fubai. And it was LZ Tombstone. Bunch of Hueys all around the place. And the guys got off that PC and they walked over into a tent. And they come out, and the guy who was helping me said, we're going on 1,800 hours. We got a chopper going up to LZ Jane. That's where we're going. So that's where Dugan would be, LZ Jane. So great. So I stood, let them, and I got my nerve up, and I walked into the tent. And I said to the clerk sitting there, I said, my name is Donohue. You want to put me on that manifest for LZ Jane? You got an 1,800 flight chopper going up there? He says, yes, sir. I said, put my name down there, John Donohue, I said. And he says, what is your rank, sir? I said, I'm a civilian. So he said, a civilian? I says, yeah. So the guy says, I'm sorry, so you're going to have to speak to Major Mika first. And just as he said that, this happened almost every day like this. Mm-hmm. Just as he says that, a guy comes into the tent. It's Major Mika. He says, well, what does he got to speak to me about? He wants to go up to LZ James, sir. He says, okay, and what's the problem? He's a civilian. Oh, you're a civilian? I says, yeah. He says, what are you going up there for? I said, well, I come up from Saigon, and I gotta find somebody up there, and I gotta go up there. He says, can you tell me what you're going up there for? I said, if I did, you wouldn't believe me anyway. So he says, try me. So I told him, not the whole story, the short version of it. I got to go up. I promised I'd deliver him some beer. Like it was a bet. Mm-hmm. And the guy says to me, he says, you guys from Saigon, you're all the same. You're all the same. Like, he thought I was some sort of agent.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense.
He thought I was some sort of agent. Mm-hmm. And so I told him, I said, I told you wouldn't believe me.
Right. Okay. Didn't. Yeah. Well, you needed to get there though. So, you're bouncing all over the country in various different ways. You're lucking into some things and you're talking your way through most of it. It sounds like, which is fantastic. But Vietnam at this time, when you went during the Vietnam War, was a very dangerous place. It was very busy with a lot of combat. Was there any point you thought to yourself, I kind of regret coming here, or maybe this wasn't a great idea? Maybe it found yourself in a precarious position?
Well, you have to realize I had alcohol with me.
Okay.
So that helped a little bit. I didn't think that much about it. I didn't hear any firing. Nobody was shooting at me. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. So up until that time, the only danger was maybe the plane crashing or something.
Okay.
So,
So how long were you in country total, bounce around, finding all your buddies?
well, remember now, this is only the second day.
Okay.
And I got on that chopper at 6 o'clock, and it took me up to LZ Jane, and that's where it got a little hairy. They had only been up there a day or two, and I got off the helicopter. There was no officer there. There was an NCO, probably a gunnery sergeant or something, or tech, whatever they call them in the Army. And he said to the two guys, who's this guy? And the guy says, Sarge, you're not going to believe his story. He says, oh, yeah, all right, try me, he says. So I'm looking at this Sarge, and you could tell him he was just a tough guy. And I'm used to talking to guys like that. And I said, all right, I'm going to tell you, Sarge. So I told him. He thought it was hilarious. He thought it was hilarious. He says, who is this guy now? Dugan, who? Where's Dugan? The guy says, they're out in a listening post. He says, get him in here. So they put Dugan on the phone. Yeah. He says, Dugan, get in here. They didn't use his name. I think they call him by a number or something. And he says, get in here. And it's starting to get dark. They're on the listening post outside the perimeter. He says, all right, Sarge. So he come in. And meanwhile, the sergeant put me in a little hooch there and put a poncho over me. And so Dugan comes in. I heard him say to the sergeant, what's up, Sarge? And he says, nothing's up. He says, but this guy. I pop out of he says, holy shit, Chicky Donohue, what the hell are you doing here? And I call him. I come over to bring you a beer, you know. And the guys that I mentioned, some were his best friends back in the block. They were all, you know, they wish they were here, blah, blah, blah. So I got some beer for you. So the sergeant says, all right, yeah, enough, he says. Take him. He says, Sarge, what do you mean take him? He says, take him with you. He says, I'm out in a listening post. He says, he can't stay here. Even I know he ain't supposed to be here. So he took me out to that listening post. Now I became a pain in the ass to them, just my presence. And I realized this wasn't any fun right there. And that night they had some activity, and guys would pass to them, and they were shooting and calling for flares and bang, bang, bang and all that. I remember they gave me a weapon. By that time I was nervous. And now I'm hearing people shooting at each other and yelling and all of that. And another guy, not Dugan, another guy in this little, there's about a dozen of guys out there, just Americans. And the guy gives me, I forget what it was. I think it was a M79, a grenade launcher.
Okay.
And he says, here, take this and use it if you need it. And I said, if I need it, I'm delivering beer. If I need it. So Dugan, never forget, he points in the distance. He says, now you see over there across that field, now it's getting dark. It is dark. And he says, over there, and I heard the dogs barking over there. And he says, if we get overrun, like, you know, if we miss the cab, you can always take the bus or something. If we get overrun, that's what we got to go across that field. That's where we're going. So that was my night. And then he went to sleep. He lay down, snoring away, and I didn't get a wink, of course. And I was up all night, and next morning we went in and they gave me breakfast with a little, what's that?
K rations? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, C rations.
C rations, yeah.
Anyway, so I spent the rest of the day there. And the end of that day or the next day, I don't think I spent another night there. I might have. It's kind of blurry now. It's 50-something years ago. He says they were moving, and I can't take this guy with me. So he's told the sergeant, whatever his boss was, and he says, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going down where the choppers are coming in and try to get him on one of them choppers. He says, all right, we'll be whatever. So he took me down to where these choppers was, and there was a Chinook there. Now, I think it was a Marine Corps Chinook, but I'm not sure. But it was a Chinook. So he talks to the guy. He's noisy. I didn't overhear what he said. And the guy says, yeah. And he comes back. He says, you get on there. He'll take you near the airport. Near the airport.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was taking me to the airport. So I get on. And he took off. And he took me to Quang Tri near the airport. And he left me in a field. And he told me it's about a mile or so down that road. That's where the airport would be. So, okay. So I get off, and now I'm walking on this dirt road. Again, there was nothing there. Huh?
Were you by yourself, though?
Yeah, all by myself. There was nobody else. There was no foreigners in their own country. There was no Vietnamese there. There was no GIs there. There was nothing. But I'm walking in that direction. It's plenty of light. And like the Jeep with the dust, I hear it coming before I see it. And here comes the Jeep coming up. And there's 2 Marines in it. I'll never forget it. And clearly they had mail sacks in the back seat. They had no cover over it. And I said, and they just, I could see they weren't going to stop for me. They kept driving. So by that time I was kind of dirty. Maybe I looked like I don't know what I looked like. And I knew they were running by, and I said, hey, guys, And the guy stopped. He says, one guy said, are you an American? I said, what the hell are you? Of course I'm an American.
Right.
I'm from New York. So the guy says, holy shit, come on, what are you doing out here? I said, I'm trying to get the Quang Tri to the airfield. So I jumped on top of the mailbags. He took me. Now I'm dealing with Marines, so I'm at home. I know lingo. I know what to say. I'm more comfortable now. So we get to a side gate or a back gate or the end gate, not the main gate, the Quang Tri airfield. And I see a C-130, no, not a C-130, an Albatross, twin engine, sitting out there. And it's getting ready to go. I know it's getting ready to go. So I go to the gate, and the MP, Marine, and he had 2 or 3 other guys with him. And okay, go ahead. And before I let him go, he said, who are you? I said, I'm a civilian. I'm trying to get down to Saigon. Nobody understood Quinnon. So I said, I'm trying to get to Saigon. So the guy says, okay, sir, you'd have to wait. Let the 2 guys go. And I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm calling the officer of the day. So call the OD. So I call the OD and blah, 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 blah to the OD. And the OD told him, and this is typical military. This is typical military. Clearly, I didn't overhear him again exactly. But from the response, I knew what they said. He says, I have a civilian out here. And he says he's trying to get to a flight or something. And he says, there's no civilians allowed through that gate. You'll wait till I get by there or something, then I'll come by later. So I'm waiting. And I waited 10 minutes. I said, that plane's going to be gone in a few minutes more. I said to the guy, I said, hey, Sarge, I said, where's the OD? What did he say? He says, no civilians allowed through this gate, so I can't let you through. I said, it's getting dark. No, there ain't no activities there in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I got to get on that plane. He says, I'm sorry, sir, but the OD says no civilians allowed. So, Sergeant, I'm sorry. All right, here's my serial number. You want my rifle number? My name is this, okay? Blah, 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 blah. Clearly, I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting on that plane. See ya. And I started walking. And he said, hold it a second. And he said something to one of the other guys, a PFC or whatever, corporal, whatever, lance corporal, whatever. So the guy says, yes, sir. And the other guy went along with me, and almost like he was like a prison chaser, right? And he walked behind me, and I went to the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't even say goodbye. Well, I said goodbye to him, I guess. And I said to the guys, I said, I got to get down to Saigon. He says, no, we're going to Phuket. And I didn't even have to get on a manifest or anything, because that airfield was right at the DMZ.
Okay.
It's like if you're traveling south and you got to Key West, if you went any further south, you're going to be going to Cuba. If I could only go one way from Quang Tri, that was south. If I went north, I would have been in North Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So clearly I was going south, and that's all I wanted was to get further south. So they took me to Phuket. By the time I got to Phuket, it was nighttime. I got off the plane in Phuket and went out the gate and started heading down the road to Quinnon. And it got dark. I shouldn't have been out on that road. It was no man's country. And I learned Japanese when I was in Japan as a 17-year-old Marine. And it was an old Korean civilian employee come up, going north, back to Phuket. And the old Koreans in those days spoke Japanese from the years they were occupied by the Japanese. Everybody spoke Japanese. So he stopped coming back, and I said, what was it? Phuket yuki wa doko desu ka? And you showed me the way to Phuket. I go, come on. Okay, Ikoi. I got on. They took me back to Phuket. I spent the night there. The next morning, I got in a convoy of a bunch of trucks that went down from Phuket to Quinnon. And by this time, when I get to Quinnon, I go right to the pier, to the port, and I look out there, ship's gone.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So now I'm there. And I'm so-and-so. I got to get this ship. You got to go to the port captain or something. Coast Guard guy. So I went to the Coast Guard guy, and he says, yeah, you're Donohue. Okay, we got you down here as missing. And he says, okay, fill this out. I filled it out. He says, here, take this. Go to that barracks over there. It's like a temporary barracks. They'll put you up, BOQ, would it be? And they'll put you up there, and we'll send this paperwork to Saigon. They'll get some orders, send it back up here to you, and then you'll fly down to Saigon, and they'll take care of the rest. So I said, well, why don't I just fly down to Saigon and fill out the paperwork down there? And the guy says, no, you got to have orders to go there. So I said, what do you mean? He says, you can't just get on a plane around here. He says, you got to have orders to go anywhere in this country. I says, is that right? I've just been on a number of planes.
I was just going to say, meanwhile, you had just...
I went north, south, east, west, mostly on planes. I said, all right, let me try. So I went back to Collins's barracks, and I found Collins. And he came out to the airport with me. And so I rode out there in an empty vehicle. So I looked like I was somebody. It looked like I was connected to something. So by this time, I had the system at the end of every runway. There was a tent. And in that tent would be a clerk. And you would have to check in with that guy before you could take off and fly out. That's the last guy you saw. You gave paperwork to or got paperwork. So he took me down to that tent. So I'm watching the tent, I'm looking at the tent, and I go in, tried the same thing to the guys. No, he says, you don't have no, I'm sorry. That guy wasn't going to be very helpful, right? So I waited outside, and I saw a guy coming, and like pilots or co-pilots, they have this paperwork, and you could see them go into this tent. So a guy was coming by me. He looked like a regular guy, and I could tell he was a warrant officer. So it's a little easier talking to a warrant officer than a major or a colonel or something like that. You know, a warrant officer tells me the guy's been around. Right. He's been in the rank and file. So I said to the guy, I said, you going to Saigon? And he looks at me. By this time, I'm filthy-dirty. And he says, yeah, I'm going to Saigon. He says, who the hell are you? I said, my name is Chicky Donohue. I'm from New York. And I got stuck up here, went up to see my brother. You know, we buried mom and all of this bullshit. And he says, I said, my ship is down in Saigon. I got to get back down there to get on. My ship is down. My ship was on its way to Manila or anything. Anyway, he says, wait here. He goes in the tent. He comes outside and he says, he asked me a question, whatever it was. I answered the question, I guess, correctly. And then he said to me, he says, that's my plane right there. When I get in that plane, I got to go do something and I'll come back. And if I give you the thumbs up, you just get on that plane. Don't say nothing to nobody. Sit on that seat just to your right, just inside the door on the right. Put yourself in that seat and don't say a word to anybody. Yes, sir. He says, and by the way, if I wasn't a merchant seaman during World War II, I would have left your rotten ass here. And so he gave me the thumbs up. I jumped in the plane. Landed at Saigon, I was on my own. And then a whole new thing started.
What
But
was the
now
whole-
I'm in a world. I'm in a city. I'm in bureaucracy. I'm in
Right.
all-
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense. And then from there, did you come home from Saigon?
I was there a few weeks, and the day I was supposed to come home, it was arranged for me to fly me to Clark in Manila, and I was going to get a ship in Manila. It was there. They agreed to take me as a crew member.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to get like an 8 o'clock flight out of Consular, so I got there 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and I had been celebrating the night before, and I didn't realize that was the beginning of tech.
Right.
And when I got to where the embassy was, well, blocks away, I'd hear the firing and everything. And there was nobody on the street, not a cat, nothing moving. So when I finally got close enough, I found a GI. I said, what the hell's going on? This GI was hiding behind a tree, shooting at my embassy. And there was guys laying on the street. They were dead. There was a Frenchman and a Renault and a driver, two of them. One was definitely French. And I said, what's going on? He says, they have the embassy. Now, up until then, I had all the luck in the world. My luck was not going good that day. So I got stuck there for hours and saw all sorts of stuff there. And then when I finally got away from there, I was going to the Palace Hotel on Tudor Street in Saigon, the Imperial or Intercontinental Palace. And two guys come out of the embassy, two agents of some kind. I asked them, I said, are you going by the palace? And the guy says, yeah. I said, can I get a lift? So he says, yeah. Now, I'm a little cleaner now.
Mm-hmm.
Probably have the same clothes on, but I'm cleaner. And he says, have you a weapon? I said, no. So he sent the other guy back to get me a weapon. So the guy goes and gets a weapon and come back. I'm going along with everything they got just to get to that palace, because I had a chip from the consul there that they would pay my bill.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in a flea bag in Cholon, again, a Korean place that spoke Japanese. So I get in a Jeep, no traffic, race down the street. He went right by Tudor Street. And I'm trying to talk to him to tell him I was supposed to get off at Tudor Street. And he made a turn and went down a side street. And then he turned to the left. And about 2 blocks away, I see a Jeep, just like ours, got hit with a rocket and went up in the air. And these two guys, they both jumped out of the Jeep. Never stopped it. They just jumped out of it. I'm in the back seat. Now, this has a cover, so you know the difference. Mm-hmm. I can't just jump out. I got to come up through either the passenger side or the driver's side. So here's this Jeep going down the street. So I get out of this thing, and there's firing all around us. He was going to the presidential palace that was under siege. And they were firing from one side of the street into the palace on the other side of the street, and where? In that street. So I crawled up to a side wall away from the palace on the opposite side. And I sat there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And then wound up there overnight. I crawled into a building around the corner and hid under a stairway. And I was born and raised an Irish Catholic. And I was under that stairway. And the concept of purgatory was crystal clear to me at that time. I thought, I might have been shot during all of this craziness of that particular day. And this must be purgatory, where there's nobody burning you, but it was constant fear, constant, I'm underneath that stairway. If somebody would have come through that doorway, I would have shot him. He might have lived there, but nobody came through that doorway. And it was just, so I sat there all night, had plenty to think about, and then I knew for sure that this beer run was a stupid thing. And
so that's when the regret started to seep in. You're like, I don't know.
Well, no, it started seeping in with Dugan that night overnight. That was the first time it seeped in. But now, this is like all that day, from like 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, until now it's maybe 12 o'clock that night, the next night. This is crazy, absolutely crazy. I couldn't sleep, obviously. So I sat there all night. I didn't know if I walked out that door the next morning, who was going to be there. Maybe Ho Chi Minh himself, I didn't know. But I did crawl out of there the next day, and the streets were abandoned. I heard less firing. And I don't know why I went back around the corner to where I spent the day, because at least I knew where some of the good guys might be and some of the bad guys might be. But that day, I finally got to down by the waterfront, and I found a ship, and I had my seaman's papers still. I talked, and by this time I had an American passport stamped on it, issued at the embassy in Saigon.
Right.
So Americans who lived ashore there could use that to get through security things. And the seaman's papers got me into the port. The port was closed, obviously. Nobody was allowed in the port. So I went into the port and found the ship. I'm a union guy. Went on this American ship, union ship, and told them who I was. So they took up a collection. They gave me some clean clothes, fed me, all right? And then I said, what do you got here? And it was a banana boat, the SS Limon, the old United Fruit ship. And they had just come in a day or two before. It was loaded with food. And so I went back to get a hotel room. I got a hotel room. And then I went to the closest safe bar was the Caravel Hotel. I had a bar up in the roof. And nobody could get you up there. So that's where I went up to have a drink or two. And I found out there was no food. They had no food. And as the days went on, there was less and less and less food. And I'm saying to myself, I know them guys down there, that great Union ship that's full of food.
Mm-hmm.
So every morning I would go down to the ship, get a couple of shopping bags. It was like I went to the public supermarket here in Florida, filled up with food, took it back to the Caravel Hotel. They not only fed me, they fed me drinks. I was the toast of the bar at the time.
Right, right. And then is it at that point that you decided, okay, I've had enough? I've been
No,
here long
I
enough?
couldn't. Yeah. There was a guy, I think his name was Gallagher. I'm almost positive it was Gallagher. He was the Coast Guard chief of the port of Saigon. And he hears my story in the bar, and he says, I think I might have a job for you. Come down to my office tomorrow morning. You're an oiler. You're qualified to be an oiler? Yeah. Security clearance? Yeah. So I went down to see him the next thing in the morning. And they needed an oiler up in Quinnon, as a matter of fact. They had an old T2 tanker that they converted into a power plant. They just had the generators there, and then they would provide power to the town, the little town, the military base. And the oiler had been hospitalized, so they were short an oiler. So he says he gets Quinnon on a wire on a radio, and he tells Quinnon, tell him we got an oiler for him, the numbers, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, he says, we're going to send him up at the mail run this afternoon. No, they say, don't send him up here. No, don't send him up here. What do you mean? You've been complaining you needed an oiler. I got an oiler here for you. You know how hard it is to find an oiler in Saigon? He says, yeah. He says, okay, but they have the airfield. Don't send them up here. It seems that Charlie had taken the airfield.
Oh.
If I would have got on that plane and flown up to Quinnon, I would have had a job. It paid a fortune, like $2,500 a month. At the time, a seaman was making $300 a month.
Oh, wow.
So
That'd been a big jump for sure.
I hit the jackpot here. So I said, no. And then I knew my fate was I had to get out of that place.
Right.
Now it's going back the other way. I had lots of luck up until Saigon. Then it started going down. So I finally, that same ship, that SS Lehman, that fine, lovely Union ship, they got attacked. And an oiler was injured in the attack. And they took him to hospital. And he would sail. He wouldn't be able to leave on that ship. He would be evacuated. So the guys on the ship went to the captain, and they said, "Listen, the union contract says dot dot dot. We can't sail what they call short. You need an oiler, and we have a union oiler. He's available, and he's here in town. And here he is. You got to take him." So the captain says, "Okay." In the beginning, he didn't want to take anybody, but he says, "Okay, I'll take him." So they hired me that night. They said, "You can go back and get your gear and everything." I said, I don't got nothing here. So I'm staying right on this ship. So I stayed on the ship, and the next morning it sailed and left me off in Seattle 10 days later, 12 days later, something like that. Got on a plane and flew home.
Wow. That's just an unbelievable journey. And I'm sure when you got back to New York and into the bar, a lot of people had a lot of questions for you. And I'm sure you got maybe tired of telling the same story over and over. So is that what brought you to write it all down in your book?
Well, yeah, in Doc Fiddlers, they all believe me. And in that neighborhood, they all believe me because all of them guys, thank God, I forgot to tell you about Pappas. We won't extend this. But Pappas, another guy was there who I caught up with in Saigon. He was up in Long Bay, about 25 miles north of the Enamel Club. And I went up there during my stay in Saigon, found them. But they all came home alive.
That's fantastic.
So, they all confirmed the story. But once I got outside of that neighborhood, if I told that story, nobody would believe me. So it got so, and I was offended. How can you make up a story like this? This is crazy. So I stopped telling that story. And then years later, I'm getting ready to retire, and my co-author, Joanna Malloy, who was retiring, and I knew her from the union during the strike. She had been a reporter for the Daily News. She came to me and said, "Chicky, I heard that story. I'd like to write about that story." She says, "And this is how we can do it. Would you go along with it?" I says, "Yeah." So she got to those guys. I was embarrassed to go to those guys. Those guys never told their story.
Sure.
And all the guys who come back, they never told their story. I mean, they confirmed, "Did Chicky come over and see you and bring you beer?" Yeah, he was there. Crazy. But that was about the extent of it. So she got them. We eventually all got together. And I'll never forget what some of them, I want to protect their privacy, but some of them, their kids told me, and their spouses told me, he never told us anything about Vietnam, except his friend Chicky come over and brought him a beer. And some of the kids told me personally, they were so happy that this happened, that I did this book, and this story was told, because, and these kids had their own kids now. Again, this is 50 years later. It said, he finally opened up. He finally spoke to us. And one of them admitted that for years he knew he needed help, and he never went for that help. He said, but when this thing happened, he says, I decided I better get that help. So he went for help, and so it opened up a lot of doors. It cemented a lot of relationships, and quite frankly, the only bad thing about it was when I started, it was the American Legion Halls, the DAV, and the Marine Corps League that sort of like invited me to come and tell my story at their Legion Hall or something. And these guys I didn't know would come up to me and say, "Why the hell didn't you come over to play Clue where I was? I could have used someone with a beer," So absolutely. I heard enough of that I knew that it was worth it. I never doubted it was worth it. And somebody said, if you really, I didn't think much about it at the time. I was not a deep thinker. I was a young guy on a party. And, but it's just something all our parents told us, particularly our fathers, the boys, just do the right thing.
Right.
And it was the right thing to do.
I mean,
I couldn't do anything else but that.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so important that all these men, all of their stories are told, because as I said at the onset, whether or not you agreed with what we were doing over there, these men went and they were asked to go, and in some cases drafted and told to go. And they went and they fought hard, and they should be respected for their service always. And I thank you for your service as well. And this is just an unbelievable, unbelievable story. Now, let me just wrap things up by saying, did I read correctly that this is now going to be a movie?
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a movie. Peter Farrelly, who did the Green Book, he
Yes,
directed
yes.
the Green Book. He somehow he got the book, and he read the book, and he got in touch with not me, somebody else, and said that he wanted to do that was going to be his next movie after Green Book. And this was just before he won the Academy Award, and he wins the Academy Award, and that's what he did. He did Green. He's doing it right now.
And do you know yet who's going to be playing you in the movie?
Yeah, I remember everybody on the Archie Bunker show, but I don't know who actors are and actresses are today.
Right.
So if you told me their name, I'd say, I wouldn't know. But the guy who's playing me, for some reason, I remember who's playing me. Oh, yeah. The guy who played the driver in Green Book,
Yes.
he's got a star role in it.
Oh, Viggo Mortensen. Yes.
Yeah. He's got a star role in it. And the guy who's playing me is a guy by the name Daryl or whatever, O'Brien.
Okay.
His last name is O'Brien.
Okay.
And there's a few of them there. I forget the name of the female. There's a female role, and the role happens to be my sister, who was one of them anti-war demonstrators. And she played not a role in me going, but she was part of the story, and it's
She's
sort
part
of
of
like
the genesis,
tells the other
essentially.
side of it.
Right. Right. Yeah, she's part of the genesis of the story in one way or another. So
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely fantastic. It is truly a great story. I commend you for having the bravery to go back over there on your own, by yourself, with nothing really except maybe, your wits. And you came back safely, and now you have this amazing story to tell. And I appreciate you giving us this time to tell us the story. And I would encourage everyone, again, the book is called The Greatest Beer Run Ever, A True Story of Friendship Stronger Than War. And that title is just so fitting, because I think that's something that holds true to the military even to this day. And Mr. Donohue, I would say to you, if you're ever up in Hoboken, New Jersey, I'd love to have you to my American Legion post, and I'll buy you a beer at my American Legion post.
I will be there. I used to take the train every day from Hoboken up to Middletown, New York.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully when you're in town, we can get you over to the Legion, and you can tell your story to the boys over there.
I'd love to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you.